is Evan Lasley. I'm the president of the United Nations Club here at SOU. And tonight we're really here to talk about Iran and some of the tensions that have been growing between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, really to understand some of the facts of the situations. I think anytime that you really think about international politics, I mean, it's hard enough to understand, even I would say, the city of Ashland and how that works. But when you try to consider these large-scale problems, and as we'll be talking about the development of a nuclear program in some manner within Iran, it becomes very difficult because we have all of the domestic politics in each of the nations individually and how people relate to their government, as well as then the regimes of those governments, how they interrelate, and all of the cultural aspects of how the American people perceive Arabs or Iranians, and as well as the Israelis. And so tonight we're really here to understand some of the facts of that situation. Why is it that we've been hearing potentially these claims that war could begin? Where does Israel lie in relation to the United States? And how do the people of each of those countries feel about what's going on? So to consider it also, the American people, through their experience of course, the Iraq War, in large regards, feel a certain reluctance, of course, to engage in something like that again in the Middle East. And that has been a part of that equation in terms of understanding what are the costs involved with war, to what extent can sanctions really achieve an end. And of course, we've had the Arab Spring, and before that, in 2009, the Green Movement for democracy within Iran. And among many of the students, also a call for secular democracy in many ways. There is a younger generation emerging in Iran which has been educating itself, has access to technology, can communicate with itself and with other groups around the world, viewing the world in a more international way. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, I had a conversation with a man, Reza Mohajenejad, who was a student in Tehran, in fact, and in Iran, and in 1999, he was a part of the leadership which led a number of student groups in protesting the regime and calling for secular democracy. And you can look at his book, it's online, don't remember the name right now, but he describes first that experience of being a student who was involved in that, and then being pursued by the regime, imprisoned and tortured, and then escaping to the United States. But one of the major aspects that I think to consider in all of this, whether when it comes to Americans or Iranians or Israelis, is humanizing each other and understanding that we are facing certain common problems as nations in terms of a discrepancy of political power of the people within these countries and their regimes. As with Netanyahu's current position being many Israelis, a majority of Israelis, in fact, are opposed to any sort of unilateral action against Iran. That's the polling data right now. And I think with the Arab Spring, there's potentially a reclaiming a narrative of democracy and saying that it's not only a Western concept, it's something that can belong to them as much as potentially it belongs to us. And within that narrative, I think with war, we have to be careful of that relationship between these nations. And we know the cost with Iraq, of course, of billions of citizens displaced, and in many ways then people killed by drones, or for generations remembering their families hurt by this war, displaced, and the cost that that has as far as the relations between our nations. But that's perhaps another issue. The main thing we're here tonight to talk about are the facts of the situation, and really get a clear picture of what is going on as far as international law is concerned, what is happening with the nuclear program, and all of that. So thank you for coming out tonight, and I'll pass it off to Herb Rothschild. He received his BA at Yale, an MA and PhD at Harvard. He taught at Louisiana State University and University of Houston. In 1978, he started the nuclear disarmament movement in Louisiana and later was executive director of the New Jersey affiliate of the 200,000 member national organization formed by the merger of Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy and the Nuclear Weapons Freeze Campaign. And he currently serves as the chair of Peace House. So please welcome Herb Rothschild.